The foreword is comprised of a poem, and then Cheryl Lee wrote a brief sort of intro to the book about, what it's about, what it means to her, and engaging with these women and their stories. A version of this poem actually appeared in a magazine about 10 years ago. And so I asked her if I could publish it in the book. And she said, yeah, but I want to tweak it a little bit. I want to play around and rewrite it. So it's a version of that poem, but she's actually made some changes to it. I've seen Cheryl Lee go to events and festivals, and I've seen the way that fans have reacted, particularly women, but also men have reacted to her when seeing her, because they're survivors of abuse, or because she means a lot to them. She's touched their lives in some way. And she is so gracious, and she's so there and present with each particular fan. It's pretty incredible to watch. But I also thought, gosh, what a burden to have to carry this character and engage with people over and over in that way, and go back to that character in that way. And so I thought the poem was a real honest engagement between Cheryl and this character who's always going to be a part of her. I mean, Laura Palmer is always going to be a part of Cheryl Lee. We're going to see her as Laura Palmer, and she's going to have to deal with that herself. And so I thought it was a real honest engagement with that character.
Can you walk us through the genesis of the idea and how the project got started?
Yeah. So in 2016, Twin Peaks season 3 had been announced, and I've been pretty involved in the fan community for a long time, and going to the Twin Peaks Festival in the US and the UK and various events. And I came back from the US festival in 2016, and I was really thinking about the character of Laura Palmer and what she means to me. But I thought, I really want to know what women think. And I want to know if they think the same things that I think. Kind of like the idea of Jennifer Lynch talks about The Secret Diary. And that one of the reasons she was interested in Secret Diaries was when she was a kid. And she wanted to read a diary and see if a girl felt the same way that she felt. So that's where the idea was germinating in 2016, is I wanted to have a book where women spoke about Twin Peaks, and specifically Laura Palmer, and only women too. This was important to me, not to exclude anybody else, but I thought it was important to have women's voices out there. And this is right before the Me Too movement, and there's just something happening in the zeitgeist where I said, I want women to speak, and this is the book that I want to write. So I decided to write a book that I really wanted to read. This is something I wanted to read. So I said, okay, I'm going to make this book. And I didn't know exactly where it was going to go or how it was going to evolve. But I knew this was a story I had to tell. It was something I couldn't let go of. I had to make this book. It kind of crosses genres in a lot of ways. There's an academic element. It does engage with some pretty serious topics of abuse, but there's a lot of lightheartedness in there too. For example, there's a woman in the community named Anita Wren, and when she meets Julie Cruz for the first time, it's a pretty fantastic moment. Her description of meeting Julie Cruz, who is this amazing singer, but also wild personality. And so there's some humor in there too. So it's got the full range of human emotions in the book.
I loved your observation about the sheriff's station pulling the tail from Jacques Renault and the missing pieces. Had they not done that, it could have led to an intervention in Laura's death. And it really got me thinking. I don't personally believe you're suggesting that the sheriff's station is directly at fault for Laura's death, but perhaps the comment on the idea that people's action or inaction in stories like Laura's have larger ramifications. Am I correct in that assessment?
Yeah, I think, first of all, you're right. I don't think that they're at fault for everything that happened. How could they know? I think it speaks to the larger issue of there's missed opportunities. And so this to me was a big metaphor for missed opportunities all around, that people didn't see what was going on with Laura right in front of them. And I think, Twin Peaks is something we all bring our own stuff, baggage, art, great, everything to it. And what's great about any great art is we're all going to see it differently, and we're all going to pick out things differently. And then we can debate over it and, argue over it, and maybe reveal things to other people that maybe you or I wouldn't see, but someone else might see. When The Missing Pieces was released, I really thought that they were just going to release deleted scenes. I didn't know it was going to be packaged as an additional movie. And what kept popping out to me in The Missing Pieces is, there's all these people surrounding Laura, but no one's really seeing what's going on. But all the signs are there, and no one's really asking the most important questions. And so that scene for me, it was like this missed opportunity to follow Jacques, which would have led to them finding out, finding Laura and Renette. But it spoke to, like you said, the larger sort of idea of complicity of everybody involved, and no one was no one was taking the opportunity to see what was really going on with her abuse.
The interview and essay from Grace Zabriskie was something I was really looking forward to, and it definitely delivered. She's one of my favorite actors. I think she's absolutely fascinating. Can you share what the experience of interviewing Grace was like?
Yeah, this was probably the most incredible interview experience I've had in my life. Grace Zabriskie is obviously a huge person in the Twin Peaks community, but she has such a long, illustrious career. I was intimidated to interview her, I'll be honest, because she's incredibly intelligent. She's incredibly just a powerful presence. I mean, you see it on screen. She's a tiny woman, but she exudes so much. And so the fact that she was going to invite me into her home was, I mean, I felt really honored and also, again, intimidated to walk into Grace Zabriskie's home. Also knowing that she's lost both of her daughters now. Her daughter, the painter, Marion Lane, died last year. And so when I interviewed her, it had been months after her death, but she was still, we'll be mourning for a long time. I'm still in mourning. One of the things that was great about being in her house was I got to see her book collection, her art collection. She had works of art from her daughter. She had works of art that she had done too. She's done incredible woodworking over the years, and she's an incredible artist. She's, obviously an actor, but she's a poet, does woodworking. She works in all sorts of mediums. And so I was intimidated, but she was very open with me, and I just let the conversation take us where, we wanted to go. But the most incredible part of the interview was I asked her about playing Juana Durango in Wild at Heart, and thinking she's just going to answer the question. And she all of a sudden transformed into Juana Durango and got up and got her cane and slipped into that Cajun accent and just ambled about the room. And I was terrified. Have you seen Wild at Heart? But it was also just an incredible moment, because I would never ask an actor to, mimic or, slip into a role. And she just did it, and did it with such ease. That was pretty incredible, that as an actor, she could just slip right into that character.
The testimonials of women in the Twin Peaks fan community really made me feel like meeting these people for the first time. So we see each other on Twitter, and I watch videos, or people are on podcasts and such. They're always kind of short blurbs or short takes of whatever. And so this was nice to be able to read some of these people, some of these women, in a longer thing. I think that's a testament to you asking good questions. The Northern Star piece is great. Mary Reber and all these people that you kind of know that are out in the Twin Peaks ether. Can you walk us through that process a little bit? Finding these women and coming up with the questions that you wanted to ask?
One of the problems that I had was I had to cut myself off after a while, because there's so many incredible people in the Twin Peaks community. I chose women that I had encountered with in some way. Most of them I've met in person, but not all. Some of them I had developed friendships online, which I consider real friendships. Sometimes someone from your social media or, online engagement better than you might know people in your own life. At least that's the case for me sometimes. But I chose people that I knew they had a story to tell, or they had a prominent name in the Twin Peaks community. The first person I interviewed was Maya McBriar, who does the Twin Peaks Fanatic blog. She had started her blog in 2014 after they announced season 3. She was one of the women I knew from a while who had been blogging about Twin Peaks and had a fairly sizable following, and people knew her. And so she had a sizable voice in the community. And I knew her well, and she's a really kind, wonderful person. So she was the first person I interviewed. And then I started, just reaching out to people over the time that I was writing the book. One of the interesting things is Mary Reber, who's the owner of the Palmer House. She was such an interesting interview because she's an incredible person, but she's also the owner of the Palmer House. But she also kind of transverses worlds. She is a fan, and then she's also in Twin Peaks too. She had a really interesting perspective, and she was kind of hard to categorize. Is she a fan, or is she part of Twin Peaks, or both? But yeah, so I had just found people I had known from the community who I thought could tell a good story.
Is Jennifer Lynch as cool as she seems?
Oh my gosh. I don't think there's anyone cooler than Jennifer Lynch. And I have to tell you, I had to cut her interview way down. There was so much, and it was painful to do that because I could have spoken to her for a long time. Jennifer Lynch is really, really incredible. We were in the middle of the pandemic and we were FaceTiming. Of course, I was asking her questions about Twin Peaks and The Secret Diary. But we ended up talking about national politics and what's going on in the world. And she has such great insight. And I can only imagine, I mean, just interacting with her, she's got to be incredible on set as a director. I feel like I would trust her and she would be able to trust you as an actor. And she's got to be great with the crew. She's funny, she's honest, she's smart. I mean, she's all of those things. She's great. She is cool.
I really appreciated her comments on the Secret Diary novel. She seems to have a solid grasp on her perspective on it now and her goals and kind of her viewpoint from when she wrote it and how it's affected people since. Yeah,
I said, I know you've spoken about the diary many times, so thanks for talking about it, again. And she said, yeah, I mean, it's Twin Peaks is a potent, force. And, she wrote that when she was really young. She's done a lot of work since. I really wanted to communicate, and I know I'm not the first person to communicate this to her, but that diary means so much to so many Twin Peaks fans, and especially reading it as a young woman. I mean, I was a young teenager when I read the diary, and it really spoke to me. It gave me the backstory to Laura Palmer in a really rich way, and it made me feel like I wasn't alone in what I was feeling or experiencing, the complex feelings that young people go through. And she's happy to talk about it. I mean, similar to how Cheryl Lee is recognized for Laura Palmer, Jennifer Lynch, among Twin Peaks fans, of course, is recognized as the author of The Secret Diary. And so people want to share their stories also with her. And so she's been really gracious about that. She said, many people, men and women, have come up to her and shared their stories of abuse or not even necessarily abuse, but just how the diary helped them navigate complex feelings when they were growing up as kids.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about your work with Blue Rose?
Sure. So I'm the senior editor and also a writer too for the Blue Rose magazine, co-created by Scott Ryan and the Red Room podcast and John Thorne, of course, of Wrapped in Plastic. And we write about mainly Twin Peaks, but we also cover David Lynch, Mark Frost, or anything kind of connected to the Lynch Frost body of art that they've created over the years. And it's been a lot of fun. We're a quarterly magazine, and we've gotten to interview and engage with and meet a lot of people over the years. And it's been a really fun ride, particularly with season 3 coming back. That was a magical time.
Do you have any kind of final thoughts on working with Cheryl Lee on this whole project?
Yeah, I mean, this book would not be what it is without her voice in it. And, the two things I, wanted to tell with Cheryl was obviously Laura Palmer's story, but also Cheryl Lee having to play and live that character for so long. She's incredibly kind, thoughtful, gracious. She exceeded my expectations because I had no idea how much insight and thoughtfulness she was going to provide to me. She was really behind the idea of the book. She really liked the idea that women were going to be speaking and sharing their stories and having a venue for that, because she's heard all these stories for years, going to conventions and festivals. And so she knows these stories are out there. And so she was very much behind that idea. One of the things I'm doing with this book is 10% of the proceeds I receive are going to go to RAIN, which is the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. I volunteered for them years ago, and it's really, really important to me. They help survivors. And because this book is telling many stories in this book, they're not all about abuse, but the major one is about survivors and victims and survivors. And so it was important for me to, have a charity that does really good, important work that I could give some of the proceeds to. I would say that this experience for me has been transformative. This was a story I wanted to tell. This is my love letter for the Twin Peaks community, but it was also very personal in a lot of ways too. There's an academic element, there's a personal element, and this was transformative for me. So, and I also just want to thank you for reading the book and for having me on, because, when I wrote this book, I thought, I hope everybody reads this book. I hope men read it. I hope everybody, it's not just for women.
Yeah. I mean, are you exhausted?
I was exhausted at certain points. Like, there are certain points in making the book that I was like, oh my gosh, is this ever going to get done? Is it going to be any good? Or is it going to be, how you have like an idea of something and you're like, I don't know if it's going to work out. So there's points when I was exhausted, but I wasn't exhausted at the end. I was like really excited because I was like, okay, it's not perfect, but it's like what I wanted to do. So here it is. Yeah.